Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, in this day and age of the Great Resignation and labour shortages, skill shortages, businesses are beginning to reassess what's needed to retain and recruit employees. Now, today's guest appeared on my radar when I read that she believes employee retention is directly tied to the culture companies create inside their workplace. So I invited her on the podcast today to talk about that, but also the mass personalization for business communications and how caring bosses boost employee retention, and also the role that technology can play in all of that too. And her name is Gianna Scorsone, and she's the general manager and head of North America at global tech company Aircall, which is also a tech unicorn with a over $1 billion valuation. We've got a lot to get to. We're going to have a lot of fun today. I'm feeling in a fun mood. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to New York, where Gianna is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you, Neil. My name is Gianna Scorsone. I grew up in New York City, and right now I work for a company called Aircall. I joined back in October of 2020, and I serve as the general manager, head of sales for North America. And I oversee every department spanning that customer journey. So everything from lead gen to partnerships and all the way through customer success as well. Aircall, we're a cloud-based phone system. And so usually it's used by people who are customer facing, wanting to have the insights and visibility into past conversations to really strengthen and deliver that customer service. Prior to Aircall, I was at a company called Mondo, and prior to that, Blue Wolf. Mondo was a spinoff of it, and I worked my way all the way from a full cycle sales rep all the way up to the COO of Mondo. Personally, to give you a little insight about myself, I'm really big on mentorship and consulting. I advise members of the startup community, and I'm also a board member of the Brooklyn-based nonprofit Read 718, which provides one-to-one tutoring for underserved children of Brooklyn.
Wow, that's phenomenal. And if I was to take you back even before the days of cloud calls, how did you get here? What's your origin story? Can you remember that moment where your passion for tech came from and what put you on this path that you're on now?
Yeah, passion for tech. I'd love to start maybe even before the passion for tech, because I have to say it was really a passion for sales. When I was 6 years old, this story comes to mind all of the time. My brother, sister, and I, growing up in the early 80s, we had a metal soldering kit, which probably is not the safest for young children, but we had it. And we would melt coins, and we would make these beautiful, little sculptures. And one day at the 2nd Avenue Street Fair, we decided to hijack and carve a little bit of an area so that we could sell these sculptures. And they gave up after about 5 minutes. And I was relentless to sell a little melted nickel for $5, mind you, in the early 80s. And I did it. I was able to do it. And that was my first thirst of the high that comes with selling and really the technique that comes with it. And so I went to college at a business school called Bentley up in the Northeast of America. And I was a marketing major, but I had to go the full gamut across all of the different business sectors. And it was a really dynamic education, because we got to learn how all of the different departments, all the different segments really fuel a business. And that's really where I got my first taste of technology. It was a very technology forward university as well. But I went into sales. I went into retail management, and I loved the energy of working on the floor at the mega chain Express. And it's really where it shaped me into understanding how to coach. And that was exhilarating. I was a little lost at some point, and I ended up buying an around the world ticket and a backpack. And at 28, I traveled the world. And so I needed to use my network to try and find a job upon coming back. And that's how I landed myself at Blue Wolf. It was through a common friend. And that's really where I learned about a powerful tech stack and how it can really catapult an organization forward because of all of the nuances that it provides for reps. It just makes running a business easy. It makes doing your job easy. And so I was both utilizing a really strong tech stack, but I was also the VP of sales operations. And so I had to build a best-in-class tech stack. And so I think that's really where I got my taste and my passion for cloud-based technologies.
Wow, what an incredibly cool story. It's a wonder that either of us survived those days before health and safety, isn't it? You know,
No kidding, Neil. No kidding.
we did survive to tell the tale. But of course, that path did lead you to Aircall, which is a tech unicorn as well. I think we should mention that. But can you tell the listeners a little bit more about the story and the problems that you solve with it?
Yeah, at Aircall, we fix and improve conversations companies have with their customers, right? Yeah. We replace these antiquated, clunky landline, business phones with internet calling voice solutions. It's a Wi-Fi connection and employees can use their mobile devices or a tablet or a computer to make work calls. And through the convenience of an app, you are assigned your own private number as well. And so it's more flexible. Additionally, I think, again, right, really talking about this tech stack, Aircall integrates with, popular business systems like HubSpot or Salesforce, Intercom, Customer, et cetera, which really allows the information to push and pull. And this is where my passion lies. I love voice, sure. But what I love is, what we are with other organizations, because it can improve how you operate. It can improve the conversations that reps are able to have. And then you get detailed analytics about those business phone calls, from wait times to length of calls and other useful insights to really improve the business operations as well. And so it creates this culture of betterment all of the time, both from the customer experience stance and also the employee experience stance. So, who we service and who we help, it's funny, I was actually listening to a podcast that Sarah, who runs our channel here, did yesterday. And, she was talking about how when she joined Aircall a few years ago, our ICP, our customer that we said to go after, was really simple, right? Who you see on the New York City subway ads, that's a great target for us. And how that's really transformed over the last few years and really now is all the way across the gamut, anything from, 5 seats to 500 seats, if we're talking about licenses, within teams that interact with customers. Right. And so, anyone that interacts with a customer needs to have valuable information at their hands. And that's what Aircall, in conjunction with these business tools that I mentioned, can really do. And so now, in the face of the pandemic, or that shift that all of these businesses had to do a couple of years ago, it really amplified who we're able to help because of the fast need in being more flexible, not being reliant on these hard, wired phone clunky lines.
And that's one of the main reasons I invited you on the podcast today, because the mass...
Thank you.
Well, I mean, the mass... When you think about the mass personalization for business communications, it's a huge hot topic right now, and you guys are right in the heart of this. So can you expand on that and how cloud-based digital-first companies are actually beginning to face fierce competition for customer loyalty? Because everything's up for grabs right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, right? It's about convenience. But I have to say, and this is where I love being part of a business where I could just use my own experience to then strengthen what we do, right? Like, we're all customers. So let's just take our own experiences and think about it that way and build thoughtfully that way. And, I believe that you have to give loyalty to receive loyalty in order to retain customers, right? And I think that that's such a simple concept. You have to give loyalty to receive loyalty. And it's not just about building loyalty programs where people get points, but it's really the experiences, right? In what and how you interact that yields that loyalty. And, a good example, I was on the phone with an airline the other day where, I've had, premier status with them for the last 5 years, right? And I often pay a little bit more to fly with them because I like being able to board early and all of those other wonderful things. And I believe in them as an organization. They are mission driven.
Yeah.
But when I called them, because I realized that I didn't have a seat assignment for an upcoming flight, and it was a flight that I had to book through one of their partners because their website happened to be down, and that's where they directed me. I was quite annoyed in speaking with someone because I would have to either use my points or pay to pick a seat because there was only upgraded seats available. And after 5 years of extreme loyalty, wow, it was a nominal amount. It didn't really matter, but it's the principle. And it's these little experiences like these, right, that show you loyalty, right? And so why I bring this up is because what we're really talking about here and how you win the loyalty game, as you asked, is that it's not just about personalization. Yes, that's back with a vengeance. But what does that mean? How do you do it? It's the context, right? Customers want what I call that, Main Street general store effect. Let's think about those, awesome old timey movies that we love to watch, or when us city slickers, go to a small town and, you walk into this small store and you notice that the shopkeeper knows exactly who walked in, knows when they need, they've got the toilet paper on the counter, their bag of flour and their eggs, because they know that it's that time of the week where they're going to need these necessities. That's context. And so now in technology, right, again, this powerful tech stack of how we push and pull information when customers call, exactly who they are, what they want, and all of that backstory history. Imagine if that person who I spoke with on that airline example understood the context that I'm a 5-year loyal customer, they probably should waive that fee. This is how you win that loyalty game, is really being able to provide all of that context so that when someone calls, when someone chats in, when someone emails, whatever channel they choose to communicate, you have all of that valuable information so that you don't have to skip a beat, so that you're not relying on the customer to tell you who they are.
Love that. And also another big topic, of course, everyone is now talking about the tech skill shortage and also the Great Resignation. But of course, people don't leave bad jobs. They actually leave bad managers or toxic culture, etc. But do you think employee retention is increasingly being directly tied to the culture companies create in their workplace? Is that the kind of thing you're seeing?
Yeah, absolutely. But let's be real, Neil. This is nothing new, right? I was in tech staffing, right? And for a decade we had been talking about how it was very hard to keep, employees loyal, right? Yeah. It's that same word that we're talking about customers. 10 years ago, there was a stat that was a person in tech had an average tenure of 1.5 years. Yeah. 1.5 years, and that was a decade ago. This isn't changing. This isn't anything new. To your point, though, we need to, as managers, recognize why people stay, individualize it, and make sure that we're hitting home and how this changes, as well as, new generations enter the workforce, as we evolve as human beings, as we evolve as a society in terms of what's important for us. I absolutely believe, that it is about the culture, it is about management. And there are 5 pillars that I strongly believe in what retains an employee, and not only retains, but allows them to thrive, because that's also very important. They want to feel like they are thriving, right? And so how do we do that? The first pillar is feeling valued. An employee needs to feel like the work that they are doing is getting recognized and that they are valued for it. The second, I would say, is they have to feel that the work they're doing is valuable, right? Now more than ever, we're looking for more mission-driven organizations, and we want our work to be tied to something we truly believe in. And it can't just be the product, it can't just be the organization, but in this culture, it has to be the work itself. An employee has to believe in it, that it drives value to the larger picture. And so you need to think about how you are providing that feeling for them to recognize this. The third is culture itself, right? Allowing people to be the best versions of themselves, allowing the authenticity, not trying to create homogeny, really recognizing and celebrating diversity and inclusion, and making sure that people feel fantastic to be who they are. Fourth is being paid fairly. And I think that this one becomes less relevant if the other ones are really strong, to be perfectly honest with you, right? Yeah. We all need to pay our bills. We all need to make sure that, we're saving up for that vacation so that we don't get burnt out. We need to pay our, here in the US, we need to pay our college loans and all of that good stuff. So being paid fairly to perhaps prevent you from looking. And I think so more than ever, it's not just being paid fairly, but, not having to ask for that raise, not having to question if your, peers who are doing the exact same job are being paid more than you. A really strong organization should be looking at this regularly. Actually, it's something we do here at Aircall that I've never seen before. And this is one of the reasons why I love it. Every 6 months, we're evaluating the benchmarks within the industry to make sure that we're paying fairly within a bracket that we believe in, and to also make sure that we don't have any pay disparities between different people, between different segments. This is huge. And as a woman, I greatly value this. Lastly, my fifth pillar, and this is the strongest one, Neil, it's about learning and growing. Yeah. People want to stay stimulated. People want to feel like they're continuing to not just move upward in the sense of a promotion, but move upward in the sense of what they are capable of, the impact that they're making, the knowledge base that they are creating so that they can evolve as a human being. This is what people are looking for at work nowadays. This is what keeps people in the seat, to answer your question.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And you mentioned how little has changed in the last decade. And if I go back to my IT days, I still remember the days where business leaders would often make the mistake of replacing people with the latest tech solution and using that tech to cut down on the headcount. But I always believe that the magic really happens when the two complement each other rather than compete against each other. And as someone that currently serves, more than 10,000 customers around the world in 84 countries, I'm curious, can you tell me a little bit more about how your technology and your people working together and how that works and how you make it easier than it possibly sounds written down?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I kind of chuckled when you talked about technology replacing people. We hear it all the time, and that's such a media frenzy because it attaches to people's fears. And I couldn't think they're more wrong, first of all, in attaching to people's fears to sell publicity, but also just that notion, because it doesn't make sense, right? It does not make sense. It just augments where we have people and where we have technology. But what's great about Aircall is that we aren't replacing human interaction. We're enhancing it with technology. To your point, it's the two merged together. And so through our data-driven phone calling solution, when a customer is connected with a company representative, that company rep now has an instant snapshot of who's calling, why they're calling, the history of the prior interaction. And that makes the conversation not only more effective, but it also allows us to solve their issue even faster. And so after the call is finished, you now also have the ability to have all of that information get populated into that person's file, along with their emails and surveys and all of the other, chatbot conversations, all of the interactions, so that, again, you get that context that I was talking about. So this is a great example of how technology fuels a person, an employee, to do their job more effectively and in an easier way. So it's just also more delightful. It brings joy. An interesting survey we did about, I think it was a year back or so, is an e-commerce study, but it showed that people who have an urgent customer service issue, 70% surveyed that their channel of choice would be phone. They want to use the phone to solve an urgent customer service issue, 70%. That means they want human interaction. Yeah. So technology isn't going anywhere. People aren't going anywhere. But as you mentioned, Neil, it's how we use it together. So it's to amplify the experience so that we create more productive and meaningful conversations. And that's also what we were talking about before in loyalty.
And you strike me as someone that's not going to just be treading water now. You're going to be looking into the future and what kind of technologies and how they can help you. So I'm curious, are there any emerging tech trends that have caught your eye that excite you, or you're just monitoring closely?
Look, of course, there's AI, voice transcription. It's all about how, we're using interactions to power stronger interactions. But I'd say the trend that I love most, and I've spoken a lot about it today, is just the continued increase in omni-channel support. Businesses need to be able to communicate with customers on their preferred channels. As I mentioned, when the last stat was 70% prefer voice when it's an urgent issue. What about when it's not an urgent issue? Perhaps they want to chat in from the website. Perhaps they want to email in. And so it's really important to meet people where they are today. So companies with the strongest omni-channel customer engagement strategies actually retain an average of 89% of their customers, compared with 33% for customers with weak omni-channel strategies. And so I love this concept of, getting the best of tools, right, in how they work together in order to meet people where they are so that they can communicate with you in their channel of choice. I kind of relate it to, I was thinking about this in my Uber ride over this morning. When you're hungry and you want to go for some really yummy food, and you find a restaurant that has like all of these different cuisines, right, in one restaurant, it might satiate your appetite. Sure, it gets the job done, but do you enjoy it? Was it good? Was it the best? Right? Probably not. And that's why you really want to go with an expert. And so what I love about the trend in what's happening today is there are emerging technologies like Aircall, like the other ones that I mentioned, that help you create the best of tech stack in order to create this omni-channel support that people are looking for today.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on AI transcription as well, but there's so much work needs to be done now. I have dabbled with a few to try and transcribe some of the episodes of this podcast, but I just end up giggling like a naughty schoolboy at the errors in there. For example, I had a guest a few weeks ago. Her surname was Stuckraft. Yeah. And it changed it to Starcraft.
That's beautiful, though. Maybe they should, Neil. I don't know. There's something there. But you know what? Think about the alternative. Think about instead a human was trying to type as quickly as possible to transcribe. I bet, I'd assume that there'd be a heck of a lot more errors than that, and a lot of frustration as well.
Absolutely. And for anyone listening out there, is there any advice that you would offer to future sales leaders and women working in tech who are coming across various obstacles? You've been there. You're doing fantastic at the moment. Is there any advice that you would pass on to anyone listening?
Oh, thank you. Yes, there is. I think, for managers out there, especially, within the tech sales space, the best bosses put their people first. Yeah. And you can achieve your results. You can achieve, the growth that you're looking for if you inspire and you motivate your teams to want to deliver even more. So rather than focusing on the numbers, really focus on people first in terms of how you can help and facilitate them hit those 5 pillars, right? Yeah. Feeling of value, feeling that they're doing valuable work, having a culture where they could be themselves, being paid fairly and not have to ask for it, and learning and growing. That is how you enjoy the growth on growth explosion of a hyper growth company like we are. And then to your question around specifically for women, I'd say be you. I come from what I call both the analog era and the digital era. And so I started my career in a world where there were, many wonderful feminists, but it's what's now considered kind of old school feminism, where when they got to the room, they acted as if they were more like a man, right? And now what we're seeing today is the celebration of really being who you are, showing up as whatever being a woman or being you means. And that's what I would share is be you. Don't try and put on a persona that is not you, because that inauthenticity people are going to feel. It's not only going to be more exhausting, where you could put that energy into doing something you're really great at, but also you're not going to be happy and you're not going to deliver your best work. So to all of the women out there, be you.
Fantastic advice. And what about yourselves, though? What's next for Aircall? Where do you go from here? Is there anything you can share?
We're going to continue to grow our footprint in cloud, communications industry. We're very excited to announce that, HubSpot Ventures extended their partnership with Investing in Us. We're their number one downloaded phone solution on their marketplace. And so it's very exciting to continue this integration first approach. And we'll see that not only with HubSpot, with other premier integration partners as well. And we're really growing our marketplace and ecosystem for natively built apps, because we know that the SMB market and upwards, it's all about the business systems you use. And so what you'll continue to see from us, and we're really doubling down these efforts, is understanding how organizations use their business systems and then build Aircall into it that way.
And I think that's a beautiful moment to end on. But before I do let you go, I always like to ask my guests to leave the listeners with a personal touch of inspiration by sharing maybe a book that has inspired them, or their go-to song that they need to get when they need to get their head in the zone, or maybe when you're exercising, or a song that's just important to you. What are you going to leave us with today, and is there a story to accompany your choice?
Neil, the song that came to mind right off the bat was from the fabulous movie Working Girl, which I used to watch when I was a little girl. It was the first movie that really exposed me to the power of what I could be, that imagery of what I want to be. I always wanted to sit in that boardroom. I always wanted to, just take over that great sale and get it done. And the theme song to it is Let the River Run. It's super dramatic, Carly Simon, and it's got, strong orchestral tones to it as well. And I listened to that song before any big board meeting, before any big pump up, when Mondo was actually going through transaction and we were doing due diligence. We had, I think 2 weeks of meetings with potential suitors. And every morning on my way to 30 Rock, where we had our meetings, I would listen to that song to get amped up. So let the river run.
What an awesome choice. I'll get that added to our playlist. And I will resist the urge to do a Melanie Griffith Southern accent saying, I got a head for business. And you know where that's going.
I know where that's going. That's that old school feminism that I was talking about.
But before I let you go, for anyone listening that'd like to find out more information about anything we talked about today or contact your team, what's the best way of doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say go on over to our, to our website, aircall.io. We've also got a Facebook page, Twitter, all of that good stuff. And I would be more than thrilled to connect with anyone that would like to. Gianna Scorsone, that's Gianna Scorsone. I'm on LinkedIn, probably the only one with that name. So feel free to connect.
And your Twitter handle, can we explain that one as well?
My personal Twitter handle?
Yeah. There's got to be a story behind that name, right?
I was just trying to be creative one day. I love spy novels, Neil. I really do. World War II, I just love a good spy novel. So Special Agent G, I want to be a spy in an alternate universe one day. I'd be terrible. If you could see me right now, you'd be able to read everything that's going on in my mind. So I wear my heart on my sleeve. So I'd be the worst spy, but doesn't mean that I don't aspire to be one in an alternate universe one day.
Absolutely love that. And today we've covered everything from mass personalization for business communications, caring bosses boosted employee retention, and tech trends. And it all can be a very dry topic, but you made it incredibly cool and fun. So thank you so much for sharing that, and also your story, and a great tune you left us with too. So thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
I cannot thank today's guest enough for coming on the podcast today, discussing how personalisation is more essential than ever for business sales and success, etc., and also offering insights from a leadership perspective and sharing her expertise on how caring bosses boost employee retention, but also the role that technology can play in that, and how the human touch combined with technology, collaborating rather than competing with each other, that is where the magic happens. And also, I cannot thank her enough for making the topic fun and bringing it to life. So a huge thank you to Gianna for coming on today, and an even bigger thank you to each and every one of you listening. But if you've got anything you'd like to add to the conversation or keep it going, email me now, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn @Neil C. Hughes, and my website, if you'd like to work with me, is techblogwriter.co.uk, where we're rapidly approaching 2,000 interviews. So keep those messages coming in. If you do have time, I'd really appreciate a rating and a review for the podcast as well in that constant battle against the algorithms. But thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.